a couple of conversations that I've had in the past with Matthew Slater, a software engineer who designs open source software for community currency accounting systems. And we've had some really interesting conversations about money and the concept of money and commodity money versus credit money and mutual credit systems and cryptocurrencies and the social meaning of money, and just really interesting conversations. If you did not catch those conversations the first time around, I will of course put links to them in the show notes for this interview so that you can go back and listen to them or listen to them for the first time. But in the time since we last spoke to Matthew Slater, he has been working with Dr. Jem Bendell, a professor at the Institute for Leadership and Sustainability at the University of Cumbria in the UK, on a MOOC entitled Money and Society. And for those not in the know, a MOOC is a massive open online course. And exactly as it says on the tin, this is an online course that will be available to the public on the concept of money and society that will be starting on August 23rd, 2015, and which will cover 4 lessons, including Lesson 1, an introduction to money, functions, forms, and fallacies. Lesson 2, the history of money and its discontents. Lesson 3, the problems with mainstream monetary systems. And Lesson 4, alternatives. So, without further ado, let's bring Dr. Jem Bendell up on the program to talk about this MOOC. Dr. Bendell, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, James. It's great to be on your show.
Well, it is good to have you here to talk about a subject that I know that the majority of my listeners are greatly interested in, or should be interested in at any rate, because of course this concept of money and how it reflects on society really is at the heart of so many of the problems and potential solutions facing humanity at this moment of time. And of course, we only have to turn to something like Greece to see that reflected in the headlines. But let's, I want to talk about this online course, how it came together, how you and Matthew decided on it, and what it entails. But in order to start doing that, I'd like to really hammer down the unifying theme and central idea of this course, money and society. So let me start by throwing out a definition for money, and let me hear your response to it, whether you agree or disagree, whether you'd like to add some caveats or what you would say about it. If someone says to you, money is fundamentally a social technology, what would be your response to that?
That is the theme, that is the idea that we share in the course, that money isn't a thing, that it is an agreement about using a system of units for enabling exchange. So we would say that yes, it's a social technology. We like to talk about it as something that is designed by us, and the very nature of that design goes on to actually redesign us as a community. So it's a thing which shapes how we interact. So it's absolutely not neutral. The way it's created, the way it enters society, how much to whom, is fundamental to how we experience economy, society, culture, how we even feel about life, whether wealth is scarce and we have to compete. So yeah, it is a form of social technology. We share that idea.
I probably picked that up through osmosis after watching the trailer for this MOOC, which is available on YouTube, a half-hour preview of Lesson 1. So I will, of course, put that in the show notes as well for this interview, so people can go check that out before they sign up for the course, if they choose to do so. So let's get into the course itself and how you and Matthew came to work on this. What drew you to this subject of money and how it shapes our society?
So I first met Matthew 10 years ago when we were both living in Geneva in Switzerland, and he helped me with my company with a website. And he was responsible for really getting me to look more deeply at the nature of money and the importance of money, but also to invite me to look more at currency innovation as a response to that. And so I became an advisor to his small NGO, Community Forge, that provides free open source software. And that was the means by which I looked more and more into this. And then over time, I studied it more and more from an interdisciplinary fashion. So not looking at it purely from anthropology or sociology or economics, but actually looking more with multiple lenses to try and get a handle on what money is and why it matters. And that got me to a place where I felt that we needed to have a new qualification offered by my institute for this growing field of currency innovators. So I validated that and we launched that. But that's not enough in itself because that's quite expensive and there's only so many people who really want a qualification in this field. And what I was worried about is that so many people are working on Bitcoin or crypto or local currencies with I think without a good basis for actually understanding money. There's so many assumptions that we keep hearing being repeated about where money came from in the past or where it even comes from today and what is sound money. That I felt that it was really an urgent need to try and help inform currency innovators. And the best way a university, I think, can do that in the current context is to create a free online course. And for me, it was natural to work with Matthew on that because the philosophy of the course is to bring together the rigor of academia and all the different literatures and theories that I can get my hands on, but in the context of how is this going to provide a really good grounding for people who work in this field, either as innovators or as critics and campaigners. And so Matthew was key to then helping me think through what is really useful, actionable knowledge.
I think
that's why we work closely on it.
I think that is very important because there is a tendency for people to approach especially contentious issues or potentially contentious issues like monetary reform by only approaching it in the echo chamber of the particular monetary reform package that they adhere to already, so that they never really see the sort of broader definitions and theories that have been proposed in the past and how they've evolved over time. So I think there is definitely a need for that. And one of the issues that you address in the trailer for this MOOC that I found particularly interesting was the sort of the story that we're typically told about how money eventually came to be, which is barter becoming coins, becoming credit based money that we have today. And you make the point, you're at pains to make the point in this trailer that that's in fact not the case. There is no historical, no anthropological evidence for that story. In fact, the real story is the other way around. Why is it so important to break these types of myths that get told about money?
So you're right. I mean, if we Googled right now, go back to barter in inverted commas, we would see probably news items coming up in by top worldwide news outlets, assuming this idea and casually repeating it, that somehow money emerged out of a system that wasn't working because as society got more complex. So yeah, you're right. There is no grounding for that assumption that people used to barter and then they created currency in the form of precious metals, for example. So the reason why we want to unpack that is because the assumption that we used to swap things and then we came up with the bright idea of using something like a coin to enable us to split that barter and have a more complex economy. That therefore suggests to us, in an almost subconscious way, that money is a thing. And it also makes us not look at what history and anthropology is suggesting, which is that complex money systems have existed for so long, for as long back as we can see in history, and they are forms of relationship, they're forms of a credit agreement. So we had credit arrangements for thousands of years before we had coins or before we had the idea of money as a thing. With money developing out of barter sort of takes our attention away from that, and therefore perhaps it tells us a wrong story of what money is as some kind of thing of value rather than agreement between people about how to enable exchange.
Well, as I say, people get so wedded to particular theories when it comes to the subject of monetary reform, and I should know because I hear from a lot of them in my audience. There are the gold bugs, there are the Bitcoin true believers, there are people who insist that public banking is the only way to go. I myself would love to see open competition of currencies, and may the best currency win. In fact, multiple currencies can win. Why do we have to always transact in the same thing at all times? But again, I think a lot of people come at this from one particular perspective, and that perspective is generally formed by the way they frame the answer to the question, what is the problem with our current monetary paradigm? So let me put that to you. How would you explain that? I mean, it shouldn't, I imagine, need to be explained to people in our current situation, especially looking at things like what's happened in Greece recently. But how would you approach that problem of what is the problem, the underlying fundamental problem of our current monetary paradigm?
Well, the first problem is perhaps the one you've just alluded to, which is that people aren't aware of their assumptions around the nature of money, or maybe they aren't fully questioning their theories about what is wrong and why it's got this way. So it's in lesson 3 that we actually look at various different arguments about what's going wrong and why it's going wrong today. But before that, we have a history lesson, and we provide lots of different views and different stories of money throughout time from multiple perspectives. And then we invite the student, the participant themselves, to attempt their own theory of the key driving factors in the history of money. So some people might think it's something to do with technology, other people think it's to do with power, other people think it's to do with conspiracy. All manner of different theories you could try and to explain how money has evolved over time. So we're not arguing for one particular view over another. We are inviting people to actually try to piece together a new idea of money for themselves based on peeling away some of their previous assumptions. And then we encourage people to debate on the forum, and they all get to see each other's theories. And they post their theories before they're allowed to see each other's. So everyone's going to just come up with their own, and then they get to see each other's, and then they interact. So a key aspect of the MOOC is to actually encourage that open critique, but also attempts at theory. And then it's only after that then we start to look at some of the sort of the deeper critiques of the current system, which are right. I mean, there's another reason why we need this MOOC, which is that we're seeing some would argue such extremism being manifested as some sort of technocratic obvious thing. So that, of course Greece must pay its debts, of course it must sell off all its state assets at knockdown prices, of course, etc., etc., etc. There's not sort of it's really quite sad to see the lack of, in many mainstream circles, the lack of understanding of the political nature of money and debt. So we do cover that in quite some depth in the third lesson, the current problems with monetary systems, with sovereign debt crises, and we explain how this is actually mathematically inevitable. If you have a debt-based money system where private banks are issuing well over 90% of the money in circulation in an economy, that's being issued with an interest demand. About 80% of all new money in the UK for individuals is through property loans. Therefore, the interest is at least 2, maybe 3 times as much as the principal of the loan. And so this creates mathematically, it creates a major problem in the system. And sovereign debt crises and periodic financial crises are the result. So we're inviting people then to think more creatively about what to do next with that understanding.
And the fourth lesson will cover alternatives. What kind of alternatives do you look at?
We look at as many as we think, as many as we've come across, from the monetary reform movement, who would like to see money as a matter of the state and to have full reserve banking and some public or quasi-public body deciding how much new money is needed. We look at that. We also look at cryptographic currency innovation. We look at collaborative credit systems, often done locally or between business networks. Some people saying that's kind of like trading without money, but they do use metrics and currency, so it depends on your view of money. We look at time banks. We look at people who are trying to sort of demonetize the way we think about value in life and encourage more reciprocal relationships or more gifting relationships. So we look at a whole range of things, and we offer them more as a menu. We do raise questions about the impact and scalability of different innovations, and we also raise questions of how likely is it we're going to see national or international monetary reform. But the key for our lesson 4 is to just help people make sure people have got a full menu of all manner of ways that people are thinking about what we do about the current system and its problems.
Well, walk us through the course a little bit. What does it look like? How do people register? And then what happens once they do so?
So people register simply by either going to the website for the MOOC, so that's ho.io/MOOC, that's MOOC, or sending us an email to the Institute, so that's iflas, IFLAS, @cumbria.ac.uk. And then they'll get an acknowledgement, and in the week before the course starts on the 23rd of August, they'll get an email with information about how to log in. And then once you've logged in on the 23rd of August, you will be able to either watch online in the platform or download a 2-hour narrated PowerPoint. And then within that, there'll be a bunch of embedded videos. Obviously, what's been great for many people interested in these topics is the amount of online content that's now available. So we take snippets of that. So that using the PowerPoint, but then you're also looking at some videos. And then we give people, it can be up to about 2 hours of reading with the recommendations that we give people. And then they're invited to do an assignment at the end of every lesson. So for example, the first assignment, at the end of a lesson, which is all about what is money, the essence of money, we pick one new innovation called the VEN. It's a currency that claims to be backed by a whole bunch of different commodities and carbon offsets and so on. And we ask people, based on how they now look at money, how much VEN would they like to hold as an asset? And we give them 3 options, and to then argue why they've chosen the option they have. And then once they click submit on an assignment, then that's when the excitement really kicks off, because then immediately they'll see what everybody else who's already done it before them has said they would do in terms of buying or not buying the VEN and their reasons. And everyone's encouraged to interact and to vote up or vote down other people's. And then we tutors, Matthew, myself, and my colleague Leander Bindewald, we all then we're engaging, we're feeding back to as many people as we can. That's quite a task, because we had 300 and something people last time we did the MOOC back in February. So that was a lot of people submitting their first assignments, and we had a lot of work on our hands to read them all and actually try to get people talking to each other. But then it really took off. It became a community after lesson 1, and people were fully engaged for the next lessons, commenting on each other, and so that was a really, really wow, it's a very powerful thing to see that through this course we were creating this level of interaction between people as far away as New Zealand and Canada and Argentina, really engaging in these topics.
It is heartening to see people waking up to this exceptionally important topic. And as I say, this goes to really the heart of so many of the problems facing humanity. And again, so many of the potential solutions that can come about through our reconception of what money is and how we can use it to our advantage. On that note, to put my money where my mouth is, or at least to put my to walk the talk, I would like to put it out there to the Corporate Report community, members of CorporateReport.com, that perhaps we can engage in this as a type of collaborative learning process, and the Corporate Report members can join in on this MOOC along with myself, and we can use it as a learning opportunity to explore the history of money and move forward from there. So I'll open that for discussion in the comment section of this interview on CorporateReport.com, and if enough Corporate Report members are interested, we'll find a way to organize that and give you and Matthew more work, adding a few more people to that list of registrants for this course.
That would be great for us. The other thing to say is that we are in the process of creating a 5th lesson based on the feedback of the first 2 cohorts. So the one from February, but also this one starting in August. Your final assignment for the whole MOOC is to think about what you believe is really important to understanding money and society that wasn't sufficiently well covered in the MOOC. And that's your assignment. You have to say what it is, why, and you have to back it up with some data, some theory, some references, and make some suggestions about how it could have been incorporated. So we're actually trying to build on the community of people that are joining this MOOC to actually influence future lessons. So we're going to do that by the end of the year, lesson 5. And I think we may even begin to see, I would love to see, some kind of crowd-developed series of future lessons, 6, 7, and 8, for example, from the participants.
Excellent. Well, that is an exciting opportunity to not only participate in this conversation, but to help shape it and to help grow it. And I think that really is the way forward, because I don't think any one person is ever going to come up with the total solution to everything. It is a collaborative process. And I think that's reflected in the nature of money itself. It's a collaborative thing, whatever it is. So let's put on our thinking caps and explore some of that history. Again, if CorbettReport.com members are interested in participating in this together as part of a Corbett Report collaborative learning process, let's engage in that in the comment section of this post at CorbettReport.com, where you can also find the links to the course itself and to the other resources that we mentioned here today. Dr. Jem Bendell, I want to thank you again for your time today. I'm looking forward to seeing this course and the response that you get to it.
That's great. I'd be really pleased to see you on the forum. Thanks.
Introducing The Last Word DVD. For the first time on DVD, you can own all 7 episodes from the first season of the Last Word video series, including The Last Word on Terrorism.
You see, to Kissinger and the other adherents of the globalist ideology, terrorism is simply a word for any act that threatens the agenda of the globalists.
The Last Word on CCTV.
But there is something more fundamentally troubling about this entire CCTV surveillance grid than mere hucksterism.
The Last Word on Utopia.
The most pernicious evil always presents itself as something necessary, something transitory, a mere waypoint on the road to the land of milk and honey. In this way, the masses can be led to not only tolerate the most intolerable conditions, but actually to support those who would seek to rule over them.
And the Last Word on Independence.
It is a choice that we make each and every day to live in independence or in slavery. Every day is Independence Day.
The Last Word DVD.